Good morning. My screen is messed up what it's showing me, but it does apparently stay proper for those of you who are watching. So if it is messed up, please say something. But again, good morning. I would like to. It's amazing to me how the Lord has been working on Brother Harris and my heart, and how many times our daily devos, which we don't talk about, for the first little bit. Good morning, Miss Brenda. Good morning, Brother Harris. For the first little bit, I kind of directed Brother Harris to cover a few things in connection with coronavirus. But of late, we've been just choosing our own, and it's amazing to me how the Lord seems to work our thoughts together, especially with His recent cover on meditating and thinking on these things. And I want to go to John 15 today, so we'll might be just a minute or two more. I will remind you of probably what we'll do for our Zoom meeting tomorrow night, as we won't make that information public. I'll try to text everyone the connection information for our Zoom meeting. Now, for those of you, it's as many of your family as wish to attend. We would like to get a bit of an update, or get a bit of a update from the family. It's not going to be we'll do a short little bit. We only have 40 minutes free, so it won't be able to be that long. But we'll have a little bit of fellowship time at least. Good morning, Miss Joyce. Good to see you too. See you. See your name on the screen. So I don't want to spend too much time. We've probably got some good viewership at the moment. So viewership, new words for this. So John 15 is one of those passages that I have spent much time considering and thinking on. I want you to go with me, because often why I go there is because it's what I often call the abiding in Christ passage. Good morning, Miss Donna. So John 15, I'm going to just read the first little bit here. It says, good morning, Miss Jen. It says, I am the true vine, and my Father is the husbandman. Every branch in me that beareth not fruit he taketh away, and every branch that beareth fruit he purgeth it, that it may bring forth more fruit. Now ye are clean through the word which I have spoken unto you. Abide in me, and I in you, as the branch cannot bear fruit of itself, except it abide in the vine. No more can ye, except ye abide in me. I am the vine, ye are the branches. He that abideth in me, and I in him, the same bringeth forth much fruit. For without me ye can do nothing. If a man abide not in me, he is cast forth as a branch, and is withered, and men gather them, and cast them into the fire, and they are burned. If ye abide in me, and my words abide in you, ye shall ask what ye will, and it shall be done unto you. Herein is my Father glorified, that ye bear much fruit, so shall ye be my disciples. Now it continues, and we're going to continue looking at that in a little bit, but the passage actually does not end. This whole chapter is one continual thought, if you will. It seems to be one continual thought, but it is divided into a few subsections. But I think this passage very definitely goes all the way down to verse 17. But we'll stop right here and talk about. So I often think about this question about how do I abide, and if you will, it kind of jumps off of what Brother Harris talked about with meditating. How do I abide in the Lord? Because I want to abide in Him. Because if I abide in Him, then He abides in me, and that's what I want. I want God in me. I want Jesus in me. That's what I want. And so I spend time looking at John 15 about this abiding, and but it's interesting. The passage is not actually about abiding. Now, I almost smacked myself for saying that, because I'm sure I've actually preached that on purpose, saying that it is about abiding. So we have to look at context, and this is again where we think about this chewing things through, this meditation, is that the passage is not about abiding. The passage is Jesus giving an illustration of a vineyard to eventually bring people to a lesson that he wants them to learn. So it's about a vineyard, okay? And Jesus quite clearly says there is a husbandman, there's a gardener, okay? There's the pruner, and that's God. God the Father is the husbandman. He's the one who cares for the vineyard. Good morning, Mrs. Haxton. Good to see you. So God the Father is the husband who cares for the vineyard, and Jesus says in this illustration, I am the vine. So Jesus is the true vine, okay? In other words, as opposed to any other vine. I don't know if you know anything about vineyards, but vineyards typically have, they try to have like all their planted plants or planted vines come from usually one source or one root source, so that there's a consistent fruit across that whole vineyard. And what here's Jesus saying is, I am that one source. I am the true vine. So there's one vine, one gardener, and then there's a bunch of branches. He says, every branch in me that beareth not fruit he taketh away. So I want you to look at this. It's, what is the purpose of a vineyard? It's not to abide. The purpose of a vineyard is to bring forth grapes. That's what a vineyard is for. If you walk into a vineyard and you're running a vineyard, you want to see grapes, and that's what Jesus is saying here. Is that he said in the story I'm painting, there is a vineyard, and a vineyard's purpose is to bring forth fruit. Okay, we'll just call it fruit from now on because that's what the passage uses. I want to see grapes. I want to see fruit. God is the husbandman. And the intent for every branch, according to verse 2, is that there should be fruit. There should be fruit. Now, don't start nailing down what fruit is, okay? That's not the purpose right here yet of what we're talking about. What is fruit? We'll talk about it. So, the intent of the vineyard is to bring forth fruit, okay? And so much so that God even says, hey Dana, good to see you too. Through Autumn's phone. So the intent of the vineyard is to bring forth fruit, and if there's a branch that is not bringing forth fruit, Jesus says that God is going to purge it. Now what that means is, what purging means is the same what we'd call pruning, okay? I have the apple tree in my backyard. As a matter of fact, I've already noticed I need to go do a spring pruning, and that's what purging means. That doesn't mean getting rid of completely. It means to prune it down so that it can, so that the life force passing through it can go to bringing forth fruit and not just branches, more branches, okay? And he says, now ye are clean. He's referencing back again the pruning process. Ye are clean through the word which I have spoken unto you. So we are properly pruned to bring forth fruit by the word, okay? So that's kind of how God functions. That's kind of a parenthesis. I'm not going to spend much time there. And then we get into this passage, verse 4, where it talks about the abiding. Abide in me, and I in you, as the branch cannot bear fruit of itself. Okay, so the abiding. Good morning, Miss Shirley. The abiding. Well, what is it talking about? Well, again, let's stay in context, because there's always a big question about what does that mean, abide? Well, what is it in context? In context, again, it's a vineyard and a vine, okay, and a branch. So if you've got the vine and a branch, the branch has to be in the vine to be able to get fruit at the end of. Let's just go like this. So this is the vine, and this is the branch. For there to be fruit at the end of the branch, it has to be connected to the vine. If it's not connected to the vine, you ain't getting no fruit. Okay, so what does that mean, abide in me? It has to be connected to. Okay? You don't take a branch apart from, you don't take a branch of the vine and have it apart from the vine and it's not going to bear grapes. That's not how things work. It has to have the branch which is connected to the roots where the life force comes from. He says, abide in me. Okay? And then he says an interesting thing, and I in you. Again, this is, sometimes we make this too complicated, but the picture that Jesus is going is that if there's fruit at the end of a branch, it's not because the branch is out there going, I'm gonna bear fruit. Oh, I'm gonna bear fruit. No, it's because the life force of the of the vine goes up through into the branch and comes out at the end, and fruit is formed because of the life force that comes from the vine, not the branch, the vine. Okay, all the branch does is reveal what kind of vine it's connected to, if that helps us connect it. Abide in me and I in you. As the branch, as it says perfectly, cannot bear fruit of itself, except it abide in the vine. No more can you. You can't any more bear Christ-like Christian fruit without being connected to Christ than a grape branch can be without being connected to the grapevine. As he says, again, I am the vine, ye are the branches. He that abideth in me, and I in him, the same bringeth forth much fruit. For without me you can do nothing. Okay, and that's important. We have to have God to do anything. Now, you understand that there's a two-way street here. We can't do anything without God, and at the same time, there's a responsibility placed upon us to remain, without Jesus. At the same time, there's a responsibility placed upon us to stay in Jesus. It's a two-way thing. Okay? And again in verse 6, it says, if a man abide not in me, he is cast forth as a branch, okay, and is withered. Men gather them and cast them into the fire, they are burned. Okay, and that's what happens in a vineyard. This is not a reference to hell, in my opinion. This is what happens in a vineyard. If there is a branch that is properly connected, it's been pruned, and it's connected to the vine, and it's not bearing fruit, it's gotten rid of, okay? It's pulled out. It's not left in the vineyard, okay? Which is very true. I don't think this is a reference to hell, just loosely, real quick. To me, this is a reference of if a Christian is going to continually refuse to be a Christian and bear fruit, then at some point God's going to say, okay, snip, we're done with you. You know, the purpose of this thing is to bear fruit. Verse 7, he says, if ye abide in me, and my words abide in you, ye shall ask what you will, and it shall be done unto you. Now here's where we have this, where Jesus is taking the picture, and he's putting a little bit more connection. Well, we get the connection first, that the branch has to be connected to the vine, and that the vine's life force has to be going through the branch. And again, I'm trying to help us walk through the thinking process of this passage. This is not a soul-winning passage, okay? It's about bearing fruit. Well, that should be souls. Well, yes, Jesus did win people to God, win people to himself, but that's not the only fruit that Jesus did. There was many other things. And we're actually going to find what the specificity that Jesus is aiming at here in a little bit. But he says that fruit cannot be born without a life force. Well, what is the life force? Well, right here we have in verse 7 the life force, that life fluid that comes from Jesus, that comes into us, and that's right here, verse 7, if ye abide in me, and my words abide in you. Now, what does the word abide mean? We all know that means, pretty much, it means to live with, to dwell with. You spend most of your time there, okay? I live at 602 12th Avenue East, but I live with my wife and with my family, okay? I live with them. I abide with them. Okay, if ye abide in me, and my address, it's my address. What is your spiritual address? What is your spiritual address? Because we should be abiding in Jesus. If ye abide in me, and my words abide in you. It says, ye shall ask what you will, and it shall be done unto you. And I'm not going to spend time there, but again, we have that life force connected. What is the life force? It's God's words, Jesus' words. It's the words of God abiding in us. Now, living in us. What is that? Well, it's exactly like what Brother Nathan was talking about. It's that meditation, that chewing on, thinking through, applying. What is the passage talking about? I remember, he mentioned before, and it's true. We spend in preparing for a message. We spend 6 to 8 hours, sometimes 10 hours, preparing a message, thinking through this. What is the passage talking about? What do the words mean? And that's the same thing here. If you abide in me, and my words abide in you, ye shall ask what you will, and it shall be done unto you. Okay, herein is my Father glorified, that ye bear much fruit. So we have that whole process again coming down to fruit bearing because it is a vineyard. The passage is about a vineyard. It's about fruit bearing. That's what God wants to see from the vineyard is fruit. And how that's going to happen, where's fruit going to come? Fruit comes if you abide in me. And I'm going to abide in you. If you abide in me, I'm going to give you my life fluid, my words, and that is what's going to help provide fruit in your life. Now, in verse 9, we're going to keep on going. Okay? Let's hang on here. I'm going to get my passage here. Verse 9, okay, says, "As the Father hath loved me, so have I loved you. Continue ye in my love." So here's another way to abide in him, okay? Jesus says, "I have abided in my Father." Okay? Now I'm asking you to abide, continue in me. Okay? And here's how we do that. He says, "If you keep my commandments, ye shall abide in my love." How do we abide in him? We keep his commandments, okay? Now, what does that sound like? Does that sound like works? Well, it may sound like works, but let's again finish the passage. It says, "As the Father hath loved me," verse 10, "if you keep my commandments, you shall abide in my love, even as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love." So was Jesus just about law, or was he about grace? Well, he was about both, okay? Now keep reading what he says, verse 11. "These things have I spoken unto you, that my joy might remain in you." It says, now I'm telling you, I said, now listen, I'm telling you because I want my joy I want you all to be joyful. This isn't just about law. I want you to be joyful. And he says, now here's the commandment I'm talking about. Verse 10, if you keep my commandments, verse 12, this is my commandment. Okay, now we know. "That you love one another as I have loved you." That ye love one another as I have loved you. There's a commandment. Verse 10, "If you keep my commandments, you shall abide." How are we going to abide? Verse 12 answers the question. Love one another. "The same way I have loved you." Now, good morning, Miss Giselle. How did Jesus love us? Well, it says in verse 13, "Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends." He gave himself for us. He gave his life for us. He gave his teaching for us. Think about it. Everything that he did on earth was for those who would believe in him. Well, actually for the whole world, but it's only efficient or efficacy is the word I'm looking for. It's only efficacious. Is that the right word? For those who believe. It's available to all. And he says, "Ye are my friends." I'm telling you, he said, "You all are my friends if you do whatsoever I command you." Well, what did he command? Love each other. Love each other. Love one another as I have loved you. And then he says, verse 15, "Henceforth I call you not servants, for the servant knoweth not what the Lord doeth, but I have called you friends. For all things that I have heard of my Father I have made known unto you. Ye have not chosen me, but I have chosen you and ordained you." That now he's really specifically talking to, I think, the apostles, but there's an application here. It says, "I have ordained you that ye should go and bring forth fruit, and that your fruit should remain, that whatsoever ye shall ask of the Father in my name, he may give it you." And then he closes with, "These things I command you, that you love one another." So we got this whole big long story. Okay, what's the story about? A vineyard, and a vineyard is supposed to bring forth fruit. Okay, it's supposed to bring forth fruit. What is the fruit that God wants out of our life? Well, right here at the very end, this is what we have: love one another. Love one another. Now, we can expand it. The application can go bigger, but in the interpretation of the passage, we can't make it talk about souls. Okay, we can't make it talk about some invisible feeling that I'm going to get inside. That if I do this certain abiding, that I'm going to get some special feeling and warm fuzzies. No, it's very clear There's a vineyard. Jesus presented the picture. There's a vineyard. God is looking for fruit from the vineyard. Jesus is the one who provides the life force for the fruit to happen. Okay? And where's that life force come from? It is His words. His words. It is literally the words of Jesus in us, and us choosing to remain in Him. We love Him. We obey Him. What is it that we have to obey? We love the brethren. So if we love the brethren and His words abide in us, so love the brethren, love the word. Love the brethren, love the word. And the fruit that God wants to see from us is that we love each other. Now again, this is that word love, agape love. Okay? Agape love. Now let me go down here. This is what agape means. It means to prefer someone. Okay, so if we're to be clear about this, when someone love the brethren, love the word, it's to prefer them over others. I'm going to prefer the brethren over not brethren. I'm going to prefer the word over things that are not the word. So if it comes a choice, now that's a hard one, but if it comes a choice between my family and the brethren, I love the brethren. If it comes a choice between my church time and my worldly time, church time should be preferred. That's what should be preferred. Love the brethren, and then love the word. It also means to care for their welfare. To love means to care for their welfare. Was that what Jesus did for us? We could not maintain a way to get to heaven, so Jesus died so that we can have a way to heaven. For our welfare, He sacrificed Himself. And Jesus now says, I want you to do that for each other. You, for the welfare of your brethren, you sacrifice yourself. Now, that just doesn't mean open up my pantry. Now's a good time to look at this coronavirus, this COVID-19 shelter-in-place orders and all this, and this is not going to end soon. Even if we go back to meeting, and they tell us it'll only be, again, 10 at a time. And we have people that don't have jobs. We have people that might be losing jobs. Things are changing all over. To care for each other, one of those things is not just opening up our pantry and saying, well, I got an extra can of green beans. That's not sacrifice. Sacrifice is giving of ourselves. It's even taking maybe the thing that I need or want so that someone else can have it. Taking the thing that I need or want so that someone else, so I hurt so someone else can benefit. Now, Jesus doesn't mean to hurt ourselves necessarily. He's not looking for us to, I'm going to give up my heart on purpose so someone else can live. But it should be a sacrifice. Okay? So I give to them. I help them. It's loving each other like Jesus loved us. That's quite clear in this passage. What is the vineyard? What is the vineyard fruit that God is looking for in this passage? That we as believers love each other. So when we sit down in this passage and we sit and think through it, that's even continued in the next verses, which we're not going to cover, verses 19 and on, because it says your love for each other should actually be offset by a hatred from the world. The world should hate you. I mean, and I think oftentimes that doesn't mean we should walk around trying to get the world to hate us. That's not the point. The point is that if we are loving each other like Christ loved us, some of that hatred will be natural. That is what will happen. If we love Christ, love the Word, like Christ loved us, the hatred from the world, the persecution from the world will be natural. So there are many people ready to spread property around right now, or to maybe do some extra things for. But what about time? What about time for each other? Can I encourage you to make some phone calls? Well, I just don't have time for that. Well, then you're not sacrificing. Don't have time. My guess is you have time to do a lot of other stuff. People devote themselves to many things that they call good. Okay, the Bible lifts up work. It elevates work and says, a man should labor by the sweat of his brow and by the toil of his hands. But you can take that lifting up of that labor and make it more important than all else. And when it does that, that becomes an idol. The Bible also, and people don't maybe understand this, but also elevates rest. Come ye apart into a desert place and rest a while. The seventh day should have been given to rest. God rested on the seventh day of creation. The Bible also elevates rest. But you can also take rest and elevate it to a place of idol worship where it becomes the preeminent thing. Okay, do you see what I'm saying? There are some people who lift up work and say, well, man, you ought to work, and if you're not working, you're not doing right. Well, there's some truth to that. Well, you ought to rest too, because if you're not resting, then you're not being a good steward. Well, there's some truth to that too. But without that being in balance, you got a problem. So all I'm saying here, follow me through, is that the fruit that should be coming from our life is love. Love. Not personal advancement. Not personal caring for myself. It doesn't matter. Notice the Bible never places why the other person is in need for us to help them. It says if you see your brother have need and you don't help them, that's not a good thing. You should help your brother in need. No, it doesn't. The matter of the why is irrelevant in the Bible. We love each other. How we love them is we sacrifice for them. Sacrifice to care for their welfare. Like Jesus loved us, we loved him. There are many people ready to spread property, but are you ready to spread yourself? Time, conversation, more than just activity, but of yourself. Give of yourself. How can you in this process, and this is for you to chew on, how can you love the brethren? And you can call and ask, that's great, but I'm telling you, what you need to do is ask the Lord, because there are people you can affect. A lot of it, I can't, my phone's up there, I'm doing the video, but a lot of it can just be from a phone call and just talking to people, spending some time, be an encouragement, let them talk, listen, give of yourself to them. Amen. So let me just reread verse 17. These things I command you, that ye love one another. So I would encourage you, friends, love one another. Love each other. Love each other. People need love more than anything else in this world. They need to feel loved and know they're loved. And Jesus is that love. And the way we can help each other is by giving them Jesus. Same thing Jesus gave us is how we should love each other. Thank you. Appreciate everyone. And again, if you have questions, please don't be afraid to ask. I think many people don't ask questions because they're afraid that maybe it sounds stupid, or maybe they're afraid it'll be controversial. If it's too controversial, we will do our best to give you an answer in private. If that's helpful, but honestly, most people have the same questions. So, and God gave us humanity for a reason, so all of our failures are the same as everyone else. So, if you will, look for ways today to love the brethren. Until we are able to meet again, may the Lord bless and goodbye.